Denny, it's Matt. I'm going to give some feedback on the submission you did for the final assignment on online teaching and learning at LaSalle, your course Sandbox. So here's your welcome. I think it's excellent. It welcomes individuals. It tells them what's going to happen in the course. It also clarifies who you are, how they can take the course, and gets them into their first activity. So it's getting them going right away. It also has a somewhat colloquial, friendly tone to it, which is going to make them more comfortable coming into this as their first page in Canvas. Another recommendation I would have is about a week before the course begins to go into announcements and to create a complimentary announcement that says a lot of the same things but probably a little bit less. Just an announcement that says, welcome to the course, my name is, in this class you're going to learn, and attached, please find a copy of the syllabus. Or you could link individuals to the home page where they could read more about the syllabus and the first activity. So pretty much just a sort of interface that directs them to go here, so that the people who are less likely to be self-starters, the ones who aren't going to navigate the Canvas before the course begins, they will have a reminder to go ahead and go do that. Other things I'd recommend on this page are a couple of things regarding accessibility. I would edit the page and try and ensure that these headers are identified as section headers within Canvas. You can do that by clicking on paragraph up here and changing it to header 2. This will always be considered welcome. Whatever gets written into the title of the page will be considered header 1. And this is a couple of things. One, for people who are blind or visually impaired, they're going to be able to scan the page. So their screen reader is going to be able to triangulate these alone, and then they can scan the page in the same way that a sighted user would. The screen reader would read header 1, welcome page, header 2, a brief bio, header 2, a link to the syllabus, and so on, all the way throughout the page. So that gives them the opportunity to navigate through the page in the same way that a sighted user was, as opposed to just starting from the beginning and reading through all the way into the end. Other recommendations are to try and just use the default to distinguish the text, to not use boldface, italics, and underlines all together, but rather just use the default text that they give to you. You might perhaps consider making this onto a second line, for instance, so that it focuses the eye's attention on, like, for instance, a 3 to 6 word header, and then maybe has a follow-up that has only one kind of formatting applied to it. And the reason for this is the same sort of thing. Individuals who are blind or visually impaired generally don't see all this formatting. So the screen reader isn't going to tell them bold-faced, a brief bio. It's just going to read it out normally. The headers are how you can call it out. And I think it will be up to you about whether or not you would want the header to include the sort of friendly alternative to the primary name given to them. I think it could work either way. Another reason why you might consider the formatting of a page like this is how it appears in mobile view. I'll send you a separate link that shows you how content that is formatted like this can sometimes appear a bit odd when people look at it on their phones. And the last piece on this page is here. I would recommend embedding a long link like this into some descriptive text. So just saying, for instance, instead of including the link, just highlight please visit my profile page and LaSalle's external website and click on link to URL and paste it in there. Same reason, a screen reader will read aloud this as opposed to try and read aloud every character of the link. And also the sighted users will be more able to see what they're being linked to directly. And I don't think it's terrible to include links like this. However, since this one's pretty long, I would recommend embedding it. If it was a really short link, though, it might be more reasonable to include the entire link out. It's pretty much the rule of thumb would be, is a person ever going to type this out directly into a web browser? And they're unlikely to do so. They would only ever click on this link. So in this case, it seems more optimal to put it in here for accessibility. So those are my thoughts about the welcome page. And I'll send you some additional resources on mobile view of a page like this. But overall, I think the page itself is excellent. It's just the design of it I have some recommendations on. So as for the module content, I think the learning guide works well at giving people questions. that you then follow up on with a little reflection assignment so that it isn't just going to be questions that they think about in their head, but are rather questions that they then actually have to apply to an assignment. It's also a good assignment to basically measure this specific outcome that you have here, practicing active reading. You have here an assignment wherein they're asked to reflect on how well they did. Regarding these outcomes, though, would recommend using different language on this last one. Think critically about the concepts of race and speciesism. Think critically is a tough one to measure, whether or not they actually have thought critically about something. I would think of a word like analyze or break down, because that is harder to do, but also easier for you to measure, whether or not they've effectively analyzed something in great enough depth. You might also consider verbs like explain and describe, but I don't think that those are high enough level difficulty in order to sort of meet the level of thinking critically. Analyze seems, or break down seems much more appropriate because it's asking them to break down the actual concepts that they have and then compare them to each other. Compare would be another good one. Although technically I think it would be a separate outcome there. Either way, I think that the module outcomes that you have here are strong things that you could include at the beginning of each week. Recommendation of it is to write in Module 1 outcomes, because every single time you try and write module outcomes at the beginning of each week, it's going to say, for instance, Module Outcomes 1, because there's already an existing Module Outcomes page. And then every single time you try and write out a new page with the exact same title, it'll keep on trying to differentiate it, and it'll get a little bit weird. So my recommendation would be to make certain to always have names which are very distinct, but also clarify exactly where this particular learning guide goes. All right. And then the last thing you would need to do is just be to add in the prompt that you would have for the discussion forum, because you have that reflection on the module outcomes to sort of scaffold them towards thinking about what they learned from the reading. And here's where you can craft a prompt where you can make sure that they interact with each other, that they start discussing those things that they've been reflecting upon and applying them to a discussion that can better help them understand overall what it means for a person to be human. And also how they can best break down their own understandings of that particular definition. I'd also recommend, although this wouldn't be a requirement here, but recommend adding a rubric to it as well. You'd have to make this into a graded discussion in order to do that. You would just edit it and toggle graded down here. And once you graded it, you'd be able to add a rubric. The option would be one of these little drop-down options, and then you could start writing out the overall requirements when it comes to the level of peer interaction that they're supposed to be engaging in, and the level of connection to the content they're supposed to engage in. So please let us know if you have any questions about that, or if there's anything else that we can do to help. Thanks.